La conférence va reprendre. Merci de prendre place.
Ah non, non, non. On remet le... Merci de votre patience.
Thank you for patience, and now we will resume the discussions. We left the panel as it was pertaining to engineering and the technologies pertaining to questions. What will be the new ways to explore in order to implement strategic projects? We had the pleasure to listen to Mr. Farouk Shabi, Riyad Hartani, and now we will give the floor to Nordin Taibi, who honor us with his presence, and he's coming from Palo Alto from California, and who is in various projects. He is an entrepreneur, developer. He's also an engineer at Polytech, and he had an outstanding resume, bio. So I would like to thank you and thank Siham for the work that has been done, and for the idea, the crazy idea that you set in place and that you are implementing. Recently, we had an advertisement from Nike that was, don't ask if your dream is crazy, ask if it is crazy enough. Don't ask if you're crazy, ask if it is crazy enough. And it is this way that we go to the edge, go to the limit, and to create an impact, economic, social, technological, and more. From our biography, I am an engineer by training. I did Polytech of Algiers. I went to the United States. After that, I have a PhD from Stanford. And after having an experience in the high-tech technology, I moved to the high-tech by myself. So I in the concrete, and I am in the implementation, how to develop a technological idea, how to transform it into a real business that allows not only to generate revenues, income, but also to infuse social value that can have impact on the long run. I would like to start by an example, actually from a company in the United States that is doing biodegradable called 7th Generation. And actually what they do is with tradition, what we call the natives, they have some Haitians, and usually they don't take decision unless thinking on the impact of this decision on the 7th generation that comes after them. And I would like to highlight the adaptation of the future of such a program, and I like the analogy that has been given, that he mentioned the waiting room. This company was specialized in baby nappies and how to meet future generation needs. And generation is moving currently very quickly. That's due to the calculation cost, which is cheap. And it is due to the component, that is transistor, that allows to electron to go from one point to another. So let's imagine what would be the effect of electron on a project as big as the gate of Algiers. So now we have electrical cars, but they're autonomous. I have currently an electric and autonomous car. I know personally, and I'm involved in a company that is working on flying cars. How can we imagine altogether the impact of this technology that will be maybe available by 2030 on such a project? So regarding the movement, we have a lot to be done, and there is a lot to be done. That's the first element. We have to have this long-run vision in order to implement the project that we need to set in place. The other aspect that has been mentioned beforehand, as you can imagine it, we have various parts of the puzzle that needs to move all together. We have to change the funding, the political way, the technology, and urbanism. We have to create a network, synergy, and to build the strategy with an implementation, with deadlines. And for each deadline, we need to define the resources that to be set in place, human resources. And Ria talked about the importance of human resources, and I totally agree with him. In any project, and I'm telling you, I am in Silicon Valley, and I raised funds for many times. The first element that the investor will look at is human resources. Who is the bidder of this idea? Before going to the idea, before going to the scale of the market, if they have the slightest hesitance about the person, they will never invest. And the human resources is very important. It's not, we are not talking about the capacity, the technical capacities of this person. We are talking about the human values of this person, the social values of this person. So we need to start thinking about what should be the next step to develop this strategy, to develop this roadmap. What will be the deadlines? What will be the needs for each deadline? And start implementing the project. Entrepreneur, it's the entrepreneur on me that is saying all that. Otherwise, we can always talk about a project that is fake, not real. But if we don't start about a plan or project, it will never be implemented. Thank you for this. Thank you for this angle, your vision. And that's why we didn't close the debate between architects and engineers. We will have other panels. The objective is to say how each of us will work through their own experience, through their own profession, discipline. How can each of us have a perspective, an outline, an outlook, and that's a very important element. How to gather all that, put them all together as a puzzle. Mohamed Khalfawi, thank you for being here. Thank you for the invitation. We are talking about an infrastructure project of 15 kilometers. It is part of the longest gates in the world, and the funding of it is one of the biggest fundraiser that we need to do. We are talking about more than $1 million, $1 billion, and that is it is a good project. There is a return on investment. We know it is profitable. We know the profitable economically and financially. Mr. Baghli said that the funding problem is inexistent. We have to implement it. So this project is profitable economically and financially. We have to provide all the proofs, the evidences, and we have to eliminate all the risk surrounding this project, structuring and infrastructural project. When I talk about the risk, it's not only the risks related to architecture, because we have a consensus between the urbanists regarding this project. Will the authorities, maritime, military, civilian, public authorities will agree? Will we have all the stakeholders agree? Will the public authorities adopt this project and put it on their pipeline? The second element, when we talk about the implementation, we went through all the impact and techno-economic studies. We have to look for the funding. Are we going to fund it conventionally? That means the state will fund it, or is it budget public fund, the treasury, that they will appoint a person, an architecture, public architecture? But of course, every time the government or public authorities will have to, in 4 years, will have to spend $1 billion to $4 billion. The second, unconventional, and it should be the smartest one, is to respect the deadlines. That's what we call the PPP, public-private partnerships, that the government will launch the call for tender, but anything that is pertaining to building and funding, that will be private sector. So that means the grouping or of companies that will be selected will be committed to fund the necessary funding to raise the relevant funding, the $1 billion, and that is done in equity. And we're talking about capital structure between 10 to 20% capital. We have to find €200,000, and the rest will be banking loans. Not to get into a very technical and to make it easy, this banking debt can be at various layers. It can be senior, that means it will be reimbursed in priority, as it can be second ranked, and the cost will be higher. And to deserve this debt, we leave this notion of profitability, financial, economical. We talk about, is the project bankable? Is the project bankable? And to do so, we talk about the quality of the sponsors, the people who did the study of this project, the company that will build the project, the stakeholders. Are they bankable themselves? Did they achieve such projects before? Do they have implementation? Do they have the human resources necessary and qualified? And in order to operate this project, commission this project, we have also to find on such projects this profitability, long-run profitability. We need resources for the long run. as the bank, the banking that will be funding this project, do they have the resources, the same maturity as the one that allows to reimburse these projects? In Algeria, if I have to fund in dinar and reimburse in Algerian banks, the current data is that the Algerian resources available within banks have a maximum maturity of 9 years. Am I able to fructify this project and allow a total reimbursement of this debt by in 9 years? The experience of similar projects is impossible. The last project that I know in the same size is the Gate Gama in Portugal, in Lisbon. The project has been built in 3 years, and the banking debt was on 19 years. It has been reviewed to reach 21 years. In Algeria, if I fund such a project on local funding with commercial and conventional funding, commercial banks and conventional funding, I will be facing this secrecy of the funding. Still, senior funding. I can FNI that has, it is the National Fund of Investment that has such maturity fund, but will the National Funding Investment Fund will do it? Will this fund involve other companies? And I'm talking about insurance companies, pensions, or should I go back to at international debt? The donors, we have to check their capacity. And we will ask the question, how to make money out of this bridge, how to create money out of this bridge, of this gate. Will it be a bridge with a tolling? Will the impact study will incorporate this toll that will they choose not to? Will the builders take the conventional and the historical funding that is to create the bay of Algiers on the using the historical, or am I going to have a free bridge and benefit from the profitability through development that I'm building through, like artificial plants? And once again, we have left and right wings issues. I'm having a free bridge in order to allow the importer from Al Hamis to prosper its business, while it has been mentioned before, those people don't pay their taxes, and without generalizing, while a family in Babelwed will have issues for the schooling and basic public services. So we have to go through all these issues from the beginning. Another element regarding the PPP, we are talking build, operate, and transfer. The sponsor of this project will build this project, will operate it during the reimbursement of the debt, and the final reimbursement will be transferred to the state, to the government, to the local authority. Thank you, Mohammed, because what you said is just gorgeous. What's great. Those elements that will be that we are not used to hear that. And that's the benefit, and that's why we would like to thank you for your presence. We have to go through the funding. That's very important. Yazid Ben Mohoub was supposed to be present to discuss other funding methods through the stock exchange. And those topics are essential and vital. And even as urbanists and architects, when we are in the planning and when we are in the manufacturing, all these elements are of a paramount importance. And the most important is to have a channel of communication. Redan Kesanti, thank you for being present here. I have a special thanks for you. Reda Kesanti is the world champion he's at Hadid Architect. He's in Algiers. He's in charge of various projects in Algiers, and very interesting project. Maybe you will talk about it. I would like to give you the floor to elaborate that. Thank you, Nacym, for the thinking, for the thanks, for the experience we shared. And Churchill used to say, first we build our buildings, and then it is our building that build us. And that's the same for the cities. Cities appear, started to appear 5,000 years ago. However, in 800, only 8% of the world population was urbanized. Now we are at 50%. In 2050, we will be 75%. So the advantage and the inconvenience is that when we're in a panel, we summarize the speech of the experts in order to tackle various topics in a very short time. It is true that the evolution of the cities was made in various ways. The advantage of the French language, the word sense has various meanings. I can use this word sense in various. I can talk about the intelligible city, smart city, that goes from a vacuum, and the city of vernacular city is built through senses. When I say about the senses, is orientation. I am here and the city is around me because I have a memory of this specific place. Or the third sense, which is the direction. And we are talking about sustainable city, sustainable development, sustainable city. As soon as it is summarized, we go with the idea that for the last years, internet has corrupted our analytical vision of the city with the insertion of the VI and VA, virtual reality, the possibility to, now we have the possibility to visit this place, Algiers, from California, and that allow us a different analysis and to get closer and to visit virtually spaces. We are talking also about comfort. I am in a boat, a ship, and don't have the possibility to be connected, but I have this quality of knowing what is going on in the world. And that's from, we have the laws, the instrument, the tool that the possibility to implement, to incorporate fauna and flora to be part of this urban composition. It is very important for our forests to be part of these cities. As like our roads to cross our villages, it is important to have an importance about to get closer to the urban cities. For the last years, everybody heard about the smart cities. I don't like this term. I don't like this. I like planned city. The planned city is the one that helps us to move in a relevant way from a point to another. The smart city is not an injection of technology, modern technological elements like Silicon Valley or others in order to find solution. That's not a smart. Intelligent or planned city, as I call it, should target humans. And that's what we were saying a few minutes ago. And I prefer to say in Arabic is building humans is more important than building stones. As soon as we invest in human beings, we can create new profiles, social conceptors that work with the society, that works with the union, with the humans. And all these parameters, these stakeholders, these experts will be able to work on a platform in order to recover information, data. These data should be collected for the heritage, current heritage, or future heritage. The future projected heritage can be managed in a very relevant way with tools, with the BIM, with the SIM, or any new technologies in order to manage our city. Not the building in the 2D, 3D, 5, it is 6D with the sustainable development cost, all XD that you have that you would like to encompass in a building or city in general. The planned city should go through a reading. We have to collect information. When we talk about a good nice building like this one, or that we see modern, that we see them all everywhere in the world, we have to incorporate technology. We go through, we scan, we recover information, and this information is so precise that we can put it in a platform. We have the possibility to make it. You have to pay to get this information, and that's where the individual can collect an information that has been produced by X and Y person in order eventually manage it. All these elements, all this chain, what we need to do. The bridge idea has never been physical. We discussed it with Nacym many times. Everybody was saying, yes, I will come, I will help, I will be a stakeholder. No, it's not an object. It is a thinking. Your idea was pleasant about to choose the bridge or not. Should we have to... now we are used to the imposed path to take. And we have to... That's the thinking. The architecture city is about that. I'm sorry I will be ending with a simple approach. If we don't have the possibility of making an analytical reading urban incoherent while incorporating the maximum of people, of stakeholders, no urban project or architectural project will be implemented. In order to involve all the stakeholders, all the readers, all the data, all the analytical analysis, all this panel are obligatory, mandatory. People in the UK, we call it fixed day. We meet all together and we share ideas, inject a collaboration platform in order to develop that platform. Thank you. I don't know if Mr. Sherry can say something in order to close this discussion. Thank you very much. There is a lot to be said, and but actually it is to open the debate and to have the opening is the key. The idea, the first idea of this bridge is to develop all the Bay of Algiers. The bridge in itself is not the bridge is only an instrument, a tool, a mean to be able to open, to path the way, to relay, to link, to connect the east of Algiers to the center. How can it be profitable socially, technically, financially? Tamanfous in the east of Algiers. Just to give you a hint about history, during the 70s, at the end of the 70s, we thought about building what we called the British visit between Lucende to Tamanfous. And we used to have a study that has been done, but this study has been stopped. We did it over the Bay of Algiers with possibilities to exchange, to occupy all the coastline, and that would have been a development toward the east part of Algiers. However, the economic problem that took place during the 80s, 85, 84, 85, that anything that has been planned, thought had been left aside due to a lack of financial funding. You know all of that, that money creates all the project. When we don't have the financial means, ideas can be excellent. However, we cannot implement them. And currently, throughout the world, because now the world, with globalization, the world is a village. Now people are interconnected. We have foreigners that can come invest in Algeria. We are not talking about Algiers. We have some taboo topic that we cannot discuss. But we need to set aside. External funding is not in the agenda. You have to be ensured that politically that's not in the agenda. It's not something that we can discuss. And I think that you are asking the question, you are setting the plan for a future project that will allow to Algiers to develop more than what have been done up to now. And for that, I would like to thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shali, for your sharing your experience and your great experience. Just to tell you, there are various questions that I have on my phone, on Facebook, and I am really sorry we cannot ask these questions because we are limited in time. So I will tell you that I will publish them, issue them in Facebook. Michel Virlogeux, and you know him very well. He's the designer of Millau Bridge that was supposed to be with us. He sent us his testimony regarding this project, and we will publish it later because he made an analysis from map, geometrical map that Abdou Chalabi, who is on the back, and we will have the pleasure to listen to later, who is an oceanologist, and he will talk about the Bay of Algiers. And I gave him this card, this map, and he honored us to develop a series of thinking, of a vision. It is quite consistent, so I will share it directly with you online. Another last word is Jean-Louis Cohen, who also sent us a very beautiful text that we will read later during the presentation of the project. So thank you.
An equally important topic, and even of paramount importance, we'll talk about teaching, about youth, and sustainable development. I would like to invite Mrs. Soulia Kassab, Director of People College, Mr. Abdel Hafid Shalabi, oceanologist, Mr. Murad Al-Wadah from IRIS, Mrs. Yasmin Turki, Director of Captor, Mr. Rafiq Balaman. Is he here? Yes, he is. Architect and teacher, Mr. Riyad Twet. And he's the owner of the video that was very successful, called Wajdanna, What Did We Do? And Mr. Aziz Swami, architect, teacher, and Mr. Tahar Musawi finally. Is he here? Yes, he is. Tahar Musawi is also an architect. You've got the bios here that we will post up. The question that we've asked for this third panel today, and we always start with today, how and why should youth carry the city of tomorrow? It is perhaps a philosophical question, but in my opinion, we've tried to raise this question this way so as everybody relates to it depending on their experiences. We now start with Mrs. Soulia Kassab, Director of EPO. Thank you, Nacym, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you for your sponsorship. We are used to sponsoring, especially when the topic is so interesting. It's a philosophical question for a panel of 8 people. That's 45 minutes, and that's also 5 minutes per person. That's the calculation that I made, but it was on purpose. Otherwise, it would be impossible, because gathering so many people was interesting around so many interesting topics. That was an opportunity, and I think that it would open the debate for the next meeting. I wanted to go back to the concept of bridge, and the term bridge is the main topic, linking and making that connection, so a space of transition and exchange. And it is this definition that I really liked in the project, a project that is really served as a space to connect all the community of Algiers, the Algerian community, and even international community, since I've just learned that through a Casbah tour guide that there have been foreign tourists who also spoke about the bridge. So I think that we first should hail this initiative, which is a new initiative in terms of urbanism, because urbanism, and we've known it to date as an orientation, a drawing, a planning, a direction, but not as a discussion platform. And that is why I say that if it's a linking bridge, then we know that these bridges are precarious, and we should try to protect them in this concept. Now, in brief, I don't want to be long. Why should youth carry the city of tomorrow, and how? I would really ask the question otherwise. How should the city be? And my predecessor spoke about the analytical reading. Can we build this city of tomorrow when we don't know how? And the teaching that I represent talks about that, because all the works that we conduct go in that direction in order to produce knowledge. Unfortunately, there aren't any mechanisms yet to collect and network a database of all the training courses that are being provided. And that should be the first action in order to try and know what we have, and perhaps that will allow tomorrow's youth to identify the issues and problems of cities. Just for information purposes, the university currently focuses on new technologies that we are trying to see what mechanisms exist in hubs and incubators in order to complete all the innovations that could be produced within the academic sector. An example of that, and I think that the winners are from EPO, and that reassures us. We are in innovation without knowing it. In all cases, the university currently focuses on this. And I'll stop here because I know that among the panel we have different opinions. Thank you very much, Mrs. Kassab. Mr. Shalabi, very delighted that you're here. Thank you, Nacym. I'll try to be brief, which is a challenge, a difficult challenge, because there are so many things to say. Allow me to quickly address the issue that was raised from the wide point of view, because from what we've heard, it's about the land or earth. Usually we have a dichotomic process. There are, white and black and men and women, etc. For sailors, it's different. There are two categories. It's the sailors and others. Just that. And for sailors, the sensitivity that they would have in terms of coast and therefore maritime landscape is different from what someone who lives inland sees when they come home tired in the evening. In the project that was presented by the group, especially by Nacym, what retained my attention was that the Bay of Algiers is sick. It's unfortunate. And I've got a video that that a friend of mine produced yesterday after the northwest storm wastewater and dirty water from the Bay of Algiers, which is usually limited to the east of Algiers, like Cap Matifou and La Pérouse, reached Baghli Island, which everyone must know, because when you reach Algiers, the planes land in Dal by the airport and take the benchmark as the island. This is the first time I see it in 30 years. Yesterday, for a first visit of many people who came to Algiers, we saw that phenomenon from Tamanfoust Tower. If we went any further, we would have seen something similar to the Amazonian mixture of water with the Atlantic. Anyway, what we need to retain in the process that is recommended today is that regardless of any project, the eminent speakers who spoke before me have covered it well, particularly from the social point of view and social economic point of view. This is an aspect that I'm not going to cover, even though it remains fundamental. However, allow me to remind you of certain milestones that should guide the reflection. I think that all the activities that we should develop today should be within the framework of sustainable development. We haven't decided that, but Algeria has joined that principle. Allow me to remind you, and for those who haven't read the 1987 report, which I strongly recommend because it's richer in what it says than in what it does not say than in what it says. In terms of coastal urbanism, I don't know what we want, but I know what we don't want to achieve. And examples of failures are known, especially in the Mediterranean basin. The Mediterranean coast in Spain is unlivable. Italy and Greece are not better. I think that it is a failure over the Mediterranean. And is Algeria going to be in the same framework? I don't think so. The other problem is our demography. For those who spoke about Tamanfoust, Al Hamiz and others, I live in Tamanfoust, and that I shop from Al Hamiz. I go out once a week because its traffic is hellish. This is the daily life of everyone who lives in the East Coast. I think that if the project, we need to solve the problems of diversity and sustainability of our activities. Then the rest will follow. I lived for a few years in different North and Southern American cities, and what I retain, as far as Europe is concerned, is that there's something that is striking immediately, and I think that Californians or Americans who are here would understand that, what retains our attention in Europe. And what makes this semi-continent is its architecture. When we walk the Ottoman boulevards and the cities from Bern to Bretagne, the quality, the aesthetic and architectural quality retains our attention, and that doesn't exist in North American cities. It's just cubes. It is practical and nice to live in those, but no pleasure to walk those streets and agglomerations. So we should seek and find the compromise between the architecture that we want, where there was history, the Arab and Muslim, but also Roman, Greek, Mediterranean history, and the functionality that we don't have. We miss that, and it is obvious that we are not going to achieve that because we're talking about 43 million. What you know in Al Hamiz will multiply by 10, perhaps by 800 in the next few years. That is the problem, and we need to combine functionality and aesthetics, and that's the role of architects. And thank you. I have a question to you. Thank you. What is the current condition of the bay?
So I've worked for quite a number of years here in Algeria, notably on the Bay of Algiers. The bay is in a very deteriorated state. So there have been a lot of works that have been done, a lot of investment that has been undertaken, analysis have been undertaken, and updating studies have been undertaken as well. But regardless, the situation, we're not really experts in the field. I take another example. When we like wine, when we taste wine, we don't need to be experts to know whether it's a good wine or not. So it's the same thing for the bay. So when you have a look at the bay, you understand clearly that it's deteriorated. There is a unique point of view, biological point of view for the bay. So I happened to swim at the mouth of Wad Al Harrash, and I found seashells, for those who know about them, whose size has never been found in our country. So it was about like 2 kilograms, whereas for this kind of shells they don't go beyond 50 grams. The quality is not acceptable. And what I wanted to say as well, and go back to your analysis, whether this project or a project of this kind could give an opportunity to take stock, as we discussed last time, to take stock of the bay and probably undertake a safeguarding operation. I saw artificial corals, reefs that we did in some regions, but I wonder, in all objectivity, whether these kind of things could be envisaged in this case. So it's an answer that requires a thesis, because it's very long. Just to remind you, T0 for the Algiers Bay, there have been a lot of works that have been done. I have a friend who is expert and specialized in this field and has the means actually to tackle this question. We have T0, but what we're lacking is monitoring. There is no surveillance, there is no monitoring, there is no regular evaluation or assessment. We know that we have 35 emissaries in the Bay of Algiers. We were told that everything was derived from the water treatment station or plant in Rghaya, and nothing has changed. So the Bay of Ormila in the western part of Algiers is deteriorated. If we swim there as if we're swimming in sewers, and every time we left the water, we got out of the water, so we used to throw our swimming suit because it wasn't really possible to wash it. And this is the interest of the project, because if we would like to be sustainable, the methodology is very well known and is standardized, and this is what we call ecosystem-based approach. It's an approach, environmental and ecosystem approach. We know how to do things, and then, in summary, it's a study of public utility with a thorough study of Komodo and in-Komodo aspects, and it's done with a more rational way and more technical way. We have the tools and we have the capabilities of doing it, so we don't need anybody to help us in this. We could probably call on some experts to help. We have university students that are craving to have an opportunity to do these kind of things, and I say that if we don't have a social initiative, there wouldn't be any studies, and it doesn't serve to anything to go and study because we used to say that we have quotas, so we study like the 244 kilometers of coastlines that other countries do, but it's really stupid because it costs a lot of money. For this, the project should be a public utility project. Once the area is limited or delimited, then the work could start. So this ecosystem approach, which is based on a spatial technique and aerial pictures. So this will allow us to do a mapping in order to implement all the technical work, which is easy. This is what we call in English social licensing, which is a social acceptance. If people don't agree, more precisely the people who are on the spot, so we could never be able to reach our goals. And we have to implement the hygiene rules, the basic hygiene rules on marine environment. And for the anecdote, or for an initiative, I think that to allow people to go to swim, especially in summertime, we should set up, driver's license system to ensure that the swimmers or the holiday goers respond or meet a certain kind of standards of hygiene and cleanliness to be able to go to swim in those beaches, or those, because it's part of environmental concern. Thank you very much, Abdul. So for your expertise, we wanted to take advantage of it. Now, Mr. Murad Louadah has engaged in another approach. He has always been associated to renewable energy, sustainable development, but as an entrepreneur. Now he's wearing a double hat, and he would tell us a little bit more on this subject. Good afternoon. I've prepared a work, but it will last 25 minutes. So we will publish that on Facebook. Now, I'm going to give some figures because it's really important. We're speaking about sustainable development. It's a really important issue. And as part of the sustainable development, we have plenty of axes. We can say 6 or 10, but the 3 most important ones are the axes that are related to the citizens, because it's the citizens that does everything. So I'll give you, our friends gave some key figures where they said that there is 10% of land area which is occupied by cities, 50% of population, world population will occupy cities, and 2% of the areas the world area is occupied by cities. In 2050, we will reach 25% of the global population, and 80% of the gas emissions, CO2 emission, will be generated by these cities. We will have 25 billion objects, interconnected objects in 2050. We will double the quantity. And the most important thing is that energy that we're fabricating, we're manufacturing today based on fossil energy, gas and oil, will be at 55% or 75% of energy produced, which will be consumed by cities, which means that everybody will flock to cities. And 10% of the land, the global land, is cities, and it's not very important figure. We will share thousands of kilometers by hundreds of people how to be able to communicate amongst ourselves. And this is where the smart city will intervene. What is a smart city? You are architects, and every time I intervene in this field, we have specifications which are very old. We still build with cement and bricks. And, we're using conventional ways of building. And the smart building requires the intervention of many people and also the intervention of digitization. Digitization is really important because I have prepared a work and I'm trying to do everything in time, minute. In 5, I said 5, just to correct you. Samia spoke about very interesting thing, because we always wonder, we have the question in methodology, it's why, when, how much, and so on and so forth. Who is going to do things? When are we going to do them? Where are we going to do them? How many and how much? And why we're doing them? So Jessel Jazair is really important. The pont of Alger, the bridge of Alger is really important because it's a vision. We're going to sell imagination, and especially marketing-wise, because I'm a marketer, we are going to sell imagination for the future. We can do a lot of things as well. We have solar energy systems, and we can exploit all the area. We have 12 kilometers, square kilometers. How much do we have? So the bridge is stretched over 17 kilometers, but we have 15 kilometers, square kilometers as area. So we have 1 hectare, and we can produce 1 megawatt of electricity. We can have minimum 30 megawatts produced only by this bridge, without forgetting everything that is going to relate it to the solar energy produced. We will have a lot of things that could lead to Algiers. So please don't see it as a bridge, as a mere bridge, but an opportunity, a future idea. Now, for the energy efficiency, which is really important as well. Why? Because we always talk about smart cities. If we don't talk about energies, how can we produce our energy? We were talking about, if we talk about sustainability, it's a circular economy, which is really important. What do we have to produce? How can we produce it? And how can we assume or consume this energy? If we don't rationalize the consumption of this energy with thermal isolation and many, many things that are inherent to this consumption, how we use smart equipment, so we will consume everything in a very short time, and we will leave nothing for our future generations. Thank you very much, Mr. Belwadah. Yasmin Turkey, the floor is yours. So, Director of Capter, your vision is of a particular importance. So, my vision for the city of tomorrow is a little bit complicated, because I was a student at architecture when I was looking for smart models or patterns from the constructive, aesthetic point of view, and I found them in the heritage rather than the historical centers. We speak about sustainable development, and I think really that I've always found fabulous in our heritage. It was the product of our culture. It was the product of our cultures, our societies. It was the product that respected our environment. And the problem with the development of our cities since the independence is that we left this aside. And this is why we're producing crazy cities which are eating our planet now and destroying us as people. And I have the feeling that this willingness to go back to the sustainable development is compulsory, because we don't have any other option. We have invested a lot of money in a century and a half, and this is why there is willingness of going back to this simple intelligence, the good sense that produced our cities in the past. And the youth element is really critical to vehicle or to convey the sensitization work to the development, to the sustainable development and the technology through teaching and through institutes and schools like the one you manage yourself. So to go back to the question why the youth could or should carry the city of tomorrow, you consider that this is one of the elements, and as I said before, it's our duty now to produce the heritage of tomorrow. We have inherited of a heritage, and we have to carry it to the future, because it's our duty to produce that heritage. This is a relation, or this relation is a little bit sensitive, because it's not about being in one or the other, but how to unite these two factors. Unfortunately, in terms of architecture, when we understand a little bit the things, we understand that we're not capable anymore to produce our heritage of tomorrow, because the heritage was given to us after thousands of years of development and sustainable development. But what we're producing today is disposable. We're building structures that could never be sustainable because we're using disposable materials that could not last over the time. We have lost our capabilities of producing heritage. Now we have to restore them every 10 years. If you take the huge projects that have been built around the world, contemporary projects which have already been restored in the past. For example, how we call it in Paris, this museum, the Saint Pompidou, whose restoration cost more than its construction 20 years after. So this is the problematic, because we're not capable anymore to produce heritage, because we strayed from the good sense that used to be used by our ancestors in the choice of their materials. In Japan, for example, I discovered that we build tombs every 20 years. It's fabulous because the Japanese had this smartness, which consists of understanding that the most important thing are not the buildings, but the mastery of the know-how. And we have to understand that this is why we should focus on, if we would maintain our heritage, we have to maintain our know-how. And these techniques that they have are completely extraordinary or outstanding, because they had the supreme intelligence to classify the handicrafts as a living heritage. It's outstanding. Unfortunately, we're not aware enough of the importance of maintaining know-how, and I hope that we could inculcate that to our future generation, because I see out of my experience there is this massive involvement and willingness to go back to the heritage, to the national heritage. And I hope that this sensitization, which is being, enshrined within the youth, would serve to something in the future. Thank you very much. Rafiq Balaman, the floor is yours. Architect and teacher, professor at the Department of Architecture at the EPO, the Institute of Architecture in Algiers. I know that it's really sensitive. He's really sensitive to the youth issues, especially the sport. I'm not going to disclose everything, but you have an intimate story with sport on account of your family. So the oldest know my father, and the youngest know my son. So how do this youth, or how does this youth carry the city of tomorrow? Thank you very much for the invitation. I'd like to pay tribute to the professor with whom I started my pathway, who is Mr. Baghli, who is my father by the same occasion, who offered me this opportunity in 1995, and with whom I started to redraw Algiers. Thank you very much, Mr. Baghli, for what you did to me. So, as for my part, I started to inculcate this notion of the city, because we redrew Algiers since 1995, and we try to inculcate to the youngsters the story of the city of Algiers. We draw Algiers and we explain that this is a city, which is particular through its urbanism, town planning. So this is why I always say we should be proud of Algiers and its urban specificities. So this is why that's what I always tell the youth. We should not import the concept of the city. So the people or the youngsters who are to draw the lines of Algiers should be able to understand what is the present city, to be able actually to draw the city of tomorrow. So it's not about importing plans or maps. And as my colleague said, it's all about the DNA of the city. We will stuff it with technology. It's not a real problem for us, but the most important thing is not to import the model, because the model we have it already here in Algeria, and particularly in Algiers. We're trying to train a generation of youngsters who know their city. Thank you very much, Rafiq. So I was really short. I complied with the timeline. So the shorter you'll be, and the more we could take advantage of the presentation of the laureates and the international context of ideas. So I am very happy, and it's by pure chance that the laureate is one of my students, and I think that we did a great job. Is he here? I haven't seen him yet. Yeah, he's here. Riyad, a character, because we cannot put him in a box. His pharmacist. He has this absolutely extraordinary site which is called "What Did We Do?" with a question mark. Good morning. So I wanted to thank the initiative of Siham and Nacym Baghli, which particularly touched me. I am among those who think that the bridge Jisr al-Jazair would be a bridge between the young and the old generation, because I belong to those who believe that we can learn a lot from our ancestors, and we can bring at the same time something to our ancestors. Today I have the impression that very often we'll live in a patriarch where there is a dominant-dominee rapport, where the oldest dominate the youngest. I hope that the relationship could go other way around. I am conscious and aware of the competence of the Algerian youth. I meet them on a regular basis and every day. It's the project What We Did Do that speaks to the Algerian youngsters, and I was really happy for this idea context reserved to the less than 30 years old youngsters. My colleague Nacym and his spouse, who impressed me with their ideas, with their vision that they have actually for the Algiers city. I am the son of Algiers, and who hopes actually that today we could build the city of tomorrow without talking about the Algerian youth as the future of the nation, but its present, because we are over 75% of youngsters below the age of 35. And I think that we could take an opportunity to do things now instead of the future, because in the future we'll be older. And we hope to see your video at the time of the contest. Adel Swami.
You have also here another star, and at least you have a lot of fun with you. And I have also enemies, to be honest. So the floor is yours, Nacym, and thank you for your invitation, and to see him also, because this initiative was I would like to answer, because you proposed very nicely to participate to this round table about sustainable development and young people. Why these young people will carry the city of tomorrow? I will very quickly answer this question. The first one is, I will start by talking about this mutate. When we talk about mutation, we are talking about a new exceptional current situation, phenomenon. No, in all humanity since its birth, since from cradle, when Adam was in heaven with Eve, when we're talking about the first civilization in Mesopotamia, we found tablets, and the young people, they're saying young people of today will never be better than the one of yesterday, and never be better, and no one will be better than tomorrow. So the only difference currently is the following. It is, we are in a universe of big data, of a lot of information to be managed in an important way. So the objective is not to listen to this mutation. No, this mutation has always existed. The only difference currently is to know how to keep mutating and adapting. While in, Amin Malouf said it very well in Killing Objective, is we have when someone have an idea, we use a lot of idea in order to operate it, and the person was dead in order to discover the arts of this person. Now, if there is an artist, we think all together. The person becomes the artist on that time. So when looking just a city like Venice, it has existed before. It's saying that they will have an important heritage, and we said that because the merchants, the traders, we have to find a new. And we moved to tourism, and we realize, and now that tourism is destroying Venice, so we have to mutate to something else. So each era, the mutation was here, and that's why project is going, and that's where I'm going to Bridge of Alger. We have group of architects like Archigram and others, or Zaha Hadid and others. Are all these people at a time or another, even if they didn't build, are pushing us to review, to think things different, to see how the impact. Now we have artists making new installations, new art, and they make you discover new bridge of Paris or in Prague, and we're asking what is behind that, and we think that there is something exceptional, great, outstanding. They're just attracting our attention to see differently, to look differently. What is extraordinary was happened in Algiers. In Algiers, if you see the mutation, I will say it in 3 eras, and you will add the one of today as a 4th. We have the era which is called Berber, Turkish, with the specific but adapted, and we have then what we call the period of 1920, what is Ottoman, and then what I used to call Osman, when we tried to impose to Osman in Algiers. Osman was eradicated because the site of Algiers imposed to not be adapting to the same way as Paris. We have to adapt to the site. And even the modern trend, it is the effect of the whole world. It's throughout the world. We have isolated, like in Marseille, and that has the same habitation as our habitat in Algiers. And to create urbanism and urbanity, that's the great ideas. We have modern ideas. We have Aéroport, the bridge, Michelet, Algeria, all these buildings, and that's the site. You can take any era, you adapt yourself to the situation. And time, era, number 4, is problematic. Why? Because the architecture and the official program that are outdated, and we have the instruments, parallel instruments. And I would like to remind you, I was in Constantine, I was looking at the buildings, and I saw one new city built by the government, and which is rectified, changed the site. While besides, you have ghettos on the highlands, and they have an excellent. Maybe it was. But it was an excellent way to adapt to this situation. So now the question is, when we say we are complaining about Hamis, but at least from writing or mechanism of the city, it is outstanding. We have to follow these people. And Bridge of Algiers arrive when Nacym asked me to participate. Is this one? It is a bridge that is material and concept. When it is a concept, it allows us to think how to connect between all sides of the city. If it is materiality, it is beyond my knowledge, my expertise. And I'm sorry, here the question, I'm not be part of it. As soon as we said it is a concept, it allows us to think things, to think about strong areas. What was this? What is the most important element when we think about the ecology? We think that the bay, I think we are open to the bay. However, there is a certain moment, and when I participate and assess the situation, I like the people who made us see different things, to look at the sea and ask what is going on the other side. What is the background of the city? What is the background of the country? It is, we're dividing the country in a mountain, sea, and highlands, deserts, and they allow us to think. And I thought, that's a good idea. So as said by certain people, the complexity levels. It is, we have to think the complexity of city like Algiers compared to any other city, how to discuss them, how to tackle these topics, how as an academician will tackle this problem. I should say that now throughout the world, the university is the most important element to change disciplinary and so on. What is my role as an academician? My role is a trilogy, in 3, if you see metrics and so on. What is the trilogy? It is a new idea, funding idea, maybe even avant-garde ideas. And then the second is going. First of all, we give you the idea, then we explain to you how it works. Then we try to go to this limit, to go beyond that and look for something else. Currently, that's the role of the university, to give the means to the students to do, to practice, to do what? To reproduce the same thing? I don't think so. The fundamental role is the university is to work with the young people, because we are getting into a frame and we are looking for we are by the book, we are go by the book. Our role is to allow these young people to dare. My role is to allow young people to go beyond, to surpass, not to go study, to teaching how to well do something, but how to put it in a situation. So when something happens, they can confront them and go beyond. I don't know, I always give this example in 1995. In 1995, is pneumatics, but the issue how sustainable development wasn't a matter of wasn't a topic. Did I go back to school to study the sustainable development? No, I had teachers, meetings, conferences that allowed me to integrate and go beyond. And that's the situation. So my role currently is not to say, and I would like to go back to heritage, our role is not to say, here are the recipe, to put them into a situation and look for new, to develop the intellect and not the know-how, and to know, period. It's to look for their own knowledge. The example of Japan, you have to understand it. I wrote an article 10 years ago. I lived in Tunisia for 10 years. I know that time I wrote an article before about heritage compared to UNESCO rules, and they had two categories of criteria: 10 for biodiversity, and I'm not concerned by that, and 6, what are the criteria? The criteria were to review a situation. We are not classifying the stone, but what they represent. And we understood that's not the stone that is important, but to know the practices, the knowledge behind the stone. And now the Japanese, there are these currents. It's in the temple. It's not that they decided to build them every 20 years, knowing the condition, the climate, earthquake. Every 20 years they have to build them. And if we're to classify, we classify them because they develop a know-how, ongoing know-how, a sustainable know-how. We are not talking about a building in itself. It is the know-how that is being inherited. And that, I will end with this. The most important for me in my teaching is not to develop know-hows, but to put the students in the core and find its own path. My objective is not to limit the students. Just to give you a study, is to give you an example. Whenever the year they are, it is a sketch of Gad Elmaleh. He's a French comedian, where he said the lesson of 25. Do you still know if you know mathematics, do you use this mathematics every day? Every day? Do you use it yesterday in the market? No. So a tub that is full of water, 20, 50 liter, I don't care. I will take the left one. So the question is very interesting. The answer very interesting. We were not looking to impose new ways. It is to see what will be the results, to allow another different of answers. I'm not sure. There is a live on Facebook and on YouTube that is simultaneous, and in order to be followed everywhere. I'm not sure if my interpreters were able to. That was tough. That was tough to follow him. Anyway, to end, Tahar Moussaoui, who honors us with his presence. Good evening, everybody. Thank you to see him, and yes, Nacym, for inviting us today. I am doing something that is not my own exercise. It's very difficult to come after so many expertise. I don't have much of a time. However, what I wanted to say regarding the question of youth or youngsters, young people have to adapt. They have to be involved. They have to be engaged. It's their city. I totally agree with Mr. Touet. It's their city, and they must own it. What I like in this project is that it's a structuring project, and as it is the case for any structuring project, there is much to be taken into consideration. And since we are a sustainable development panel, and different aspects are involved, social, economic, and cultural. Per my job and by my position, I'm more attracted by the economic side and energetic efficiency. Project like this one have to take into consideration energetic aspect of the city. And when we have to gather, we have to think how to manage the energy. And that's very important today, and specifically today, given the problematic of Algeria first and all the countries throughout the world, how to manage the energy. And two, the city of tomorrow must be able to consume less energy and even produce from this. And it's said by Mr. Wadah, we can benefit from this project in order to install a certain new philosophy and to generate energy. What needs to be said is that Algiers, to give you some figures, buildings consume 42% of the total energy of consumption of Algeria, which is huge. That means that it's not a productive sector. It consumes only. Such a project can allow us to reduce this consumption. And if you make a comparison between the residential and the third parties, the residential produce not consume but 32% of energy. The rest is lands. And incorporating this element into a project like yours is very interesting, and that allows also to design the energy efficiency, not on the units of a building, like said Mr. Wadah, with isolation, but to conceive the energy in the urban side. And here we have to take into consideration, because it's very important. And our ancestors, the heritage, allowed us to learn how to consume. So we should lead by example and restore that. And this project is very close to my heart. I'm keen on this project because it's really very good for young people. And thank you very much. Murad Wadah, to end. I love figures, and I will give other figures. Since His Excellency the Ambassador of Italy is here, I would like to give you just a comparison, very simple, between, in Italy, 75% of the consumption of energy is industry. In Algeria is 8%. 8% is industry. So that means industry only 8% of our production, energy production. That's serious. Now we spend more than 75% in CO2. That means anything that is produced goes in the air, because we don't have isolation. There is no thermic. We don't have the right equipment. I will go back to experience we have. The Minister of Interior asked us to reduce the consumption of schools to 30%. And now we are using solar energies for schools at 100%. I gave an example just for Hydra, because you can visit it. It's in the school of Hydra, and it is 100% for the last 3 months. It is with solar. It works with the operation and commissioned with solar energy. Used ondulars, batteries, and it has autonomy of 3 days. We are going through other schools where we do the 3 phases, and we have the school, 12 classrooms, and it is a new school in Get Constantine. The kitchen, and we are intervening in the water pumping, and for 12 classes, and the lighting with the 15 kilowatt. And currently Sonelgaz has depth of 1,000 billion Algerian dinars, and the budget, municipality budget, is 80% for the administration, between mosque, schools, and administration. Please, architect, get closer to this our office. It is very important to have the energy result, because a lot of people, what do we need to install? We have to have an energy. We need to know how much we are going to spend. Return on investment is very important. It's true that the kilowatt is administrated, but given the instructions and the threshold of Sonatrach, we are paying your energy very expensive. Thank you, Murad. What I wanted to say that we are going to publish your communication and put it on the site, and to allow everybody to benefit from it. And to go back to Tahar, the bridge had been well thought as an upstream, a sustainable bridge that will produce energy and that will be autonomous, a smart bridge. We talked about technology and application that will be connected and so on. Just to tell you that all these readings, lectures can be taken into consideration and integrated in this infrastructure. I would like to thank you. Now we move to the last panel.
Et non des moindres parce qu'il s'agit.
Now we are talking about art and design and media. And I would like Nadira Laguna. I don't know if she's here. Maybe she left. Zubir Halal. Feriel Gasmi Izyachem. Jawdet Gasuma. Khaled Dragni. I think he is gone. Maya Zarraqi Ben Jimred.
Et le compte est bon.
And we have all the stakeholders, all the panel. So the other people are not in the room. Karim Sergoua was supposed to be here, but I think his train didn't make it to Algiers. So it's something good because it allows us to we give you the biggest share, the creativity. Creativity, you're only 5. And for the architects who we are, creativity, art, and design is something that is very of a paramount importance in our creation. It is no more to dissociate professions and discipline, but it is a whole that can lift challenges. The question that we asked is very simple. How can we think the drivers of creativity? Let me explain. What is the role of art in all disciplines, in all its readings? What will be the role of the design? And now we are talking about architecture. And what will be the role of media in order to disseminate this energy and integrate it in urbanism architecture? And that we have the tendency to associate. We go back to schools, fine art, architecture, engineering, how to put them all together. I would like you to intervene and discuss this topic, and I will start with Nadir Laguna. Because Nadira Lagoon, because you are the director, and you have something to say about it. I'm very much interested by plastic arts, fine arts, and I just wanted to start by talking about the city in the representation made by the artists. We have an army of painters, and most of them represent a city, a thought city, imagined city. We see the Casbah, pictures of the Casbah, of the streets of the Casbah, and that's the Casbah of not today that we see every day when we walk through it. Maybe imagined, dreamed of Casbah, a Casbah that is inspired of the Orientalist movement of a certain time. I'm always talking about the Casbah and enters through certain behaviors, attitudes of certain era. The question which I'm always asking myself, why do we like to these artists go back always to the past? Maybe because they're idyllic women on the terrace. I don't know if the women of the Casbah now can do it, but and this story of return to the past is I'm always asking a lot of questions about it, because there is a hazard, there is a danger in the past, in the passéism. And here I would like to talk about Hegel. Stating Hegel, he said, "Be careful of the past. He can be the destructor of the present." Those are generation. They are connected. They are connected to internet. They are living with the new technologies. And we're asking ourselves, what is this contradiction between the representation of city, of such like Algiers, and this manipulation? Specifically, this new generation, they master this new technology. Which city are we dreaming of? Because beside that, seeing what it is being built, it's ugliness everywhere. Because now what is being built everywhere in the world is ugly. We have to define beauty, but we have also to define what is ugly. That's the question. And that's my real thinking when I see what is being. And another side, from the other side, we can notice in the fine art school we had various works made by the students. They propose in smart cities with you have to something that allows you just look at something and you can cross the street, allow you to cross the street, all that kind of things. So there is something contradiction in our societies between this dreamed image and this look, which is the one of today, very rough, toward the new technologies. Besides, we have also, in the city, the city is dependent of the consumption, energy consumption made by the inhabitant. And I think those inhabitants, through this consumption is the one that gives it its shape, this structure. I'm not an architect, but the structure of the city, the shape of the city is defined by the consumption. We have an urban culture that's being developed here and there with artists from the street art that's intervene within the city, and that's a part of the owning the city. And the question is, and that we don't allow such thinkings, questioning. It's they vandalize the street, they vandalize a wall. This streets art street, and so maybe that's what I have in my head, and that's what I want to underscore. There is an urban art, amber culture, and whoever is going to transform the city to change it, to shape it, we have to take into consideration the consumption of spaces. Thank you, Mrs. Lagoon. Actually, that's the topic. How art must be a vehicle for creativity as in urbanism. When we see some street, and go back to New York, in Brooklyn, what the identity that has been manufactured in this district, and you have just crossed a bridge, and you find yourself in another art, and that's what we want to have. That in Algiers, to have the debate in this area. We want the artists, plasticians. We have art critics, media, communication, to be involved, to have this discussion, because they disseminate this message, and this creativity, urban creativity, cannot be disseminated without their help. Because if we think about it autonomously and independently, we see the result on the ground. For us, it's very important to integrate this element in manufacturing, fabricating the city. Mr. Halal, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for your invitation. I have a triple career. I'm an independent plastic artist where I obey my own original disobedience because I ate the apple, and I've had a career of teacher as the Algiers Fine Arts School, where I produced a series of art and object designers, but also I was an exhibition commissioner. What I noticed in Algeria is there is no good governance in the field of city management, especially what concerns people who walk, or those who cross the street. So we consider the art of history is a decor of other disciplines. I studied design in France in the 70s. That was another story when we talk about the design of It's not only just know-how, but it's also about giving added value, and that added value we give it to intelligence, taking into account users, discussing with them, being at their service. So the first designers did not think of minorities, small minorities of users. So
I like the work that has been done by Cherbel Punkt in the 1907, and for the big idea that has led them to the design bridge. And that's where we see the work that has been achieved with the boroughs, and then later on with the and others in Algiers, where we felt that we have since this 1975 to adopt the biggest pedagogical lines of boroughs and of Dulm school, and as part of the education, we had German and French that have come here in order to have a know-how, disseminate know-how, and to have an exchange. The only period which I know what we had, which were interested by designers, what we had Sonatrach and SNS. They partnered with Anna Pry. They came to Algeria, and they had some information. They brought with them designers from Switzerland, Italy, France, and so on. And one of them taught in the Fine Arts of School was a German from Argentina, and who came help setting up what is communication, visual communication. The first, that's what the design of the city, the signalytics, the communication in the areas, in the underground and airports. That was in the 70s that we started to develop logos and so on, and panels. We are no more in position where to the artist that is going to dreaming for himself, and he's free. He's also he's for the population, and that's the same for the urban spaces, for the furniture. We're talking about consumers, and I am condemning for years for the management of the city, at least to put it in a shape is disastrous. When we see one of the most beautiful one of the most beautiful road in Algiers, street of Algiers, which is Didouche, the quality of the material used for the pavement, it affects the psychology of the population. Where you are walking, and then because the pavement is well done, and you fall and you get injured, and you ask yourself, and I always, as an architect, I have always to think, and when we draw, we have an utopic drawing, because I know that the utopists are moving with the history. They give birth to other projects. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zohair. Thank you very much for your analysis. Feriel, the floor is yours. Feriel is very active at different levels. Well, let's say that we try to be in a city that doesn't offer many opportunities to express oneself. But I wanted to go back to the debate, which is a relevant project. I was going to say it's a beautiful project. I don't know the future of this project, but what I retain is this opportunity for this panel and the questions and the intervention in the history of the city. Of course, we are always the last ones to be consulted, but the problem is not there. Even though the market share is, or the lion's share is for the end. Now, talking about urbanism, as you know, I grew up with an urban expert, and I've seen throughout my life the project of the Bay of Algiers around me, and which was a utopia for me, which is why I chose another way and preferred to work around a smaller scale. And as Mr. Hilal Zubair said, when you talk about design, you no longer speak about that in a beautiful way, because in Algeria, design is fully marginalized, as it is very misunderstood and not fully addressed, not consulted and ignored by the authority. So we give a lot of share to contemporary art more than design, and I turn to you here because you know what I'm talking about. And the question of design in this kind of project calls upon me today because this project is conceptualization about all forms of expression, because I believe that architecture is a major art, even though design is a minor art, which is often considered marginalized or put in the framework of applied arts, whereas it is increasing in countries that understood that design has the present economic power at all levels. Because between artists, be it designers or architects, there is no more a gap that exists. And I believe that this project, I hope that it will see the light for those who have ideas, and that's wonderful. But even if it doesn't see the light, for me, I think it's a new momentum, because it represents a parallel world to the real world of the decision makers. There is no choice. I am impressed today by the quality of the speakers, and suddenly we see that all the thoughts converge towards the same will to make the city of Algiers and the Bay of Algiers, with all the stakeholders, youth, artists, architects, urban designers, and inhabitants. But you also have the parallel world that imposes upon us ugly things, where we are no longer capable of identifying, recognizing ourselves in this city, because culturally we no longer can live that. And I believe that this kind of bridges is an opportunity for a new debate and discussions to have a manifest, a kind of manifest. I spoke about that, Nacym, if you remember, and it's about conciling all these stakeholders around the same wish together, and to say that there are thinking heads that they know what their city should be in terms of art criticism and others. I'm impressed by the audience, which stayed until the end, whereas usually people get bored. I think that shows the quality and the interest of this project. I really hope that this project sees the light, and that the art and the strong message that carries. But I believe that we should dare and going towards decision makers to make our voices heard. Thank you, Fariel. You just summarized the Algiers meeting. That's the spirit of this meeting. And you spoke about the manifest. And further to this meeting, we suggested to publish the acts of the meeting, and everything that has been said today since 2 p.m. is being recorded, and we'll share that. It is a source that will be shared with youth, especially, and it will be disseminated. It was disseminated on social networks in English, on YouTube. This is to say that the Algiers meeting is not only for us, and we're trying to see beyond, look beyond our simple horizon. Thank you for summarizing this. It was very important. Thank you very much.
Maya Bendimred.
Maya Bendimred. I think that without her, we wouldn't be able to make this event a success. But before that, we have Jodit Gisuma. Sorry about that. I think it's because of Fariel. Jodit Gisuma, thank you for being here. And prior to starting, I know that there is an exhibition or at least an event that you're organizing at a gallery with Mrs. Sharifi this Thursday, 31st of January. Everyone is invited. And it talks about the Bay of Algiers, yes, with about all these variants, the Bay of Algiers, and with people who are concerned by the topic, creators, designers, architects, and also the public is invited. It will be between 6 and 10 p.m. It will be relaxed. There will be coffee and pretty much everything. And qalbilous pastries if you want. Well, Algiers and the Bay of Algiers, to speak about this event, the bridge. For me, Algiers, I've always found it fascinating, and being a professor currently at the Fine Arts School, I try to instill in the minds of my students a lot of ideas about the how and why we should love this fascinating city at different levels. I am one of the last generation people who studied architecture at the Fine Arts, and we've done it also with town and city planning. So all the basics of architecture, I've always been fascinated by the idea that we should have the MOTEP. It means that architects are very important, and I've always been fascinated by this city. And it's always been an ultimate protagonist in my novels, especially where I spoke about crossing the bay as looking through the glass. So someone gets hurt by the mirror that they broke, and having the optimistic and positive vision. And my vision was not, but that's in a novel you can afford that. And it is true that it is a fascinating city, abrupt, with a disordered alphabet, heteroclite, and walking there is a commitment and rewriting the city and giving it another alphabet, but also having a new writing. Why not? And going back to our heritage is very important. And I think that it is a city that deserves a stopover and going based on something new. What I wanted to share with our friends here is the concept of that would be parallel to yours, but going in the same direction. We spoke about the back and forth earlier, and I think that the bridge, I see it as a transgressive line. The bridge is scary because it is an element of transgression, and Algiers has always lived in a past that was dangerous. But we shouldn't be afraid of the future. I like the idea, the philosophical idea of a bridge as a line based on a bay with the spaces and stopovers and the islands. I think of it as a stopover, and I think that it is the impact of a new writing, and I believe that going towards resilience, and the neuropsychiatrist spoke last time about different resiliences, and I fully share the idea of resilience, because the idea of resilience and of transcendence, going forward and crossing over obstacles, is interesting. As art, cinema, plastic arts, contemporary art raise new questions and new interrogations, and interrogating the bay and the city in parallel, that I encourage it, and I encourage the existence of this bridge and the concept of its transgression towards Meftah. Why not having an air bridge, overhead bridge? It's not an injury. Let's take it just as an element of transcendence and resilience, and only dreams and arts allow us to go towards these new directions. Thank you very much, Jodette. Thank you.
Alors, cette fois-ci, c'est la bonne.
Maya Zalouki Ben Dimled. without whom we sincerely wouldn't be able to finalize this event on time with all the challenges that we had to meet, and it was a fabulous experience that we lived together with also Safia and El Hadi. I don't know if they're here, but thank you. We also wanted to have your opinion about how this vehicle of urban creativity should be viewed by the media and also communication. First of all, I would like to thank you, Nacym, and thank Siham, because you carried this project.
Because you bore this project as a fourth child. You solicited us, and we couldn't say no. We couldn't turn down. We are still here to talk about what goes well and what doesn't go well in Algeria, but we find a few people that support the most crazy or the craziest ideas, and we are looking for these people that bear projects that look like crazy. And I'd like to say that all the achievements born by the humanity seemed very crazy in the very beginning, and nobody believed in them, and those ideas lasted over time. And I'm very happy to meet people that bear this kind of projects that go beyond their day-to-day life of couples or parents to implement their ideas. So I know that I went through difficulties, and if I had to do it again, I would do it again without any problems. It's such a big honor for me and for the people who supported me. So for the media, even though I'm not working there anymore, but I still practice media, and I would like to emphasize that the media or the press is a very important player in every action undertaken by the society, or so we cannot neglect this contribution. I was pleased to meet again people and see again people that I invited as part of my shows at the radio when I was working there. And I'd like to reiterate that all the ideas, all the initiatives and concepts were welcome. So media are help and play a very important role in fulfilling the ideas, so don't hesitate to call on them anytime. So I'd like to say that these media should be educated and sensitized as to social issues. It's not always the fault of journalists, but the fault of their superiors. The editing people are more and more scarce, and the qualified media people are also very rare to come across. So Riyad Hartini spoke about the difficulties and the problems that the media are facing these days. So the project carriers, architects, and people from IPO. So I think that it's very interesting to approach the media
J'ai envie de dire aujourd'hui que Alger,
as part of trainings and as part of sensitization. So the Jisr al-Jazair, I don't see it as, I cannot see a bridge that crosses the Bay of Tamanfous to Zeralda or Algiers. Your idea is magical and virtual, but we'd like to invest in it. So it's about the development of maritime transport. The people, the citizens of Algiers don't use the sea. They use it to go very far and come back, and sometimes go very far and not come back at all. So it's really a pleasure when I went to Istanbul, for example, to Istanbul with my family, to take boats, to travel from one seaside to the other, from one river to the other. So it was really entertaining. Why couldn't we do the same thing in Algeria? Why couldn't we be able Why couldn't we actually take a boat actually to go from the Bay of Tamanfous to go to Algiers and vice versa? I'd like to sensitize people and axe our works on that particular way of crossing the sea before reaching the point, the bridge of Algiers. It's a way to transport, it's a means of transportation. Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to call on somebody who is dear to my heart, Mr. Baghli and Mrs. Soria Kassab, to conclude, to make a summary of all these panels and conclude this session of today. So the two at the same time, because we're running short of time. So these are surprises. Just like this bridge, I was surprised to be scheduled for the summary, which forced me actually to take notes and to be good at what I do. So I am not sure whether I carry on with my work of elaborating a summary or give conclusions very quickly. So I noted that the first panel, there have been important questions which have been raised, whether the 21st century urbanism will be part of a pilot project with regard to the failure of the urbanism that we experience now in the 21st century through all the urbanism instruments or mechanisms. It's a federating project, and we wonder whether this project will bring back on track the urbanism of Algiers in a coherent way. A notion which I liked very much is that I would call the reflection on the city brought by our colleague Aren, I'm not really sure about the name. As a matter of fact, so a balcony is a place where we could regularly debate on the present and then the future at the same time. This notion that should allow to open and make this population participate in the day-to-day life of their city and the future of their city as well. So thoughts went back on the role of a governance in a city, because a city, as a matter of fact, cannot function or work unless there is a governance which is located at both levels, at two levels, strategic and local at the same time, of monitoring in the management of this city. For the second panel, the project which has been seen as a program, which means that it wasn't only a project as we know it, which means, pose the problems and go to the end. So it's a project which lasts over time, so many tools that should be put in place, governance and funding and finance, and we had some experts that demonstrated that without the most important thing, we cannot do a lot of things, and also the importance of documentation. We cannot build a city unless we know it very well. And if we want to know it very well, we have to document it. We document all the production, the existing production. As for the third panel, which questioned again, through the project, the place of quality in our environment, in our city environment of the Bay of Algiers. So the place of the monitoring, of the participation of citizens, which comes back systematically. And another thing which was really important, so something which really struck me, It's the observation of the youngster who said that it was the opportunity to connect the different generations. I'm saying it because in my capacity as a teacher or professor, I'm in a permanent contact with students. I believe that we don't have enough rapport or relationship with these youngsters. We don't listen to them very much. And it's an opportunity that is given to us to enrich our relationship through the social networks, which allow us actually to listen to them and listen to other generations, because we don't have only one. And finally, the place of the heritage in this new project. I will come back to heritage later. The fourth panel allowed to insist or emphasize how to speak about the city through art and go beyond that. So the project of the bridge that allowed us actually to do so, and which thanks to those thoughts allow us to see what is the role of the media, whether the social networks are enough communication or whether it has to be related to other media outlets. So now I ask the question, so about the bridge or a smart city, isn't it that city which should be conjugated in the past, present, and the future? And the stake is that we're talking about innovation here, a new project which is about innovation. Could we do innovation without knowing our history, without knowing our roots? And Jisr al-Jazair, through its position in the, or location in the bay, allows us to open up horizons. And through this bridge, we will have broad horizons. And with this, I thank you and give the floor to my colleague.
Good evening, everyone. Nacym started earlier with expressing his thanks, and I would like to reiterate to all participants. But I also wanted to start with some congratulations. I wanted to congratulate Nacym and Siham for all the work, for all the process, and also congratulate their parents who had to put up with, we support them in this process, and also their children who were patient and who saw them stay up late and sometimes slightly neglect them. But I think that the grandparents were there to look after them. Having this said, I also wanted to say congratulations for the winners of the competition. I also wanted to provide some directions about what we discussed today. The first one is the name of bridge, the appellation of bridge, which I never accepted. I think that bridge reduces the dimension that we've imagined and what we should provide. So I prefer a connection, a link, but not bridge. I think that Jisr, bridge in Arabic, is better. I think that this link, this connection, this bridge will be an opportunity to have a platform, a podium, to admire the bay. We do not show our back, like many had reluctances about this project to say that we will destroy the bay. It's quite the opposite. We look at a different direction and invite people settle better and to see the bay in all its splendidness. For this facility and urban project. When we talk about urbanism, there's something that shocked me. I think that this concept excludes the maritime aspect. We're only talking about land. And perhaps in theory or in the academic language, in this term urbanism, I don't know whether the sea is included. Perhaps people are better placed than myself to address this concern. But for this project, I remembered a gentleman, a Roman, Mr. Metalev, who defined all constructions to say that they should comply with the 3 essential criteria, and to date, those criteria are still up to date. He spoke about fermitas. When we talk about the robustness, solidity, and resistance, but also the sustainability of a facility. When we build something, it should resist time, structurally speaking first. And he also spoke about utilitas. Which is the functioning and other parameters. The third criterion is unistas. Venustas, and it refers to Venus, and that's beauty. Anything that could be pleasant, beauty, and in Venustas I would add a side that is not directly sad, that is the happiness, satisfaction, and amazement. And that is something that we don't have in our cities. We do not project a happiness in our cities. We only inject technical aspects. But if we can add to the concerns and programs this parameter, this in the design, in order to inject some happiness into the cities, is Mr. Vitreux was present today, and I would add another criterion, which is that of rentabilitas, and that is, if that could exist, profitability. The issue of profitability should all constructions be profitable? I would say yes, even when we build a house. Profitability is not only financial, it's not only about money, it's profitability for health, for mental health, for the next generations, profitability for nature, for what God has given us. And we sometimes tend to neglect. So learn to make profit out of anything that we produce. And to end my statements, I was asked to make a conclusion. And for me, concluding is living and finishing and dying. I'm not going to conclude anything whatsoever. I think that the debate is not over. It was initiated a long time ago, and it only continued today, and it should continue. And to continue it, as Nacym said, we need to give the relay and ask other cities around the world to make proposals about specific topics that concern them, but also about the general term that we've tried to address today, but never forgetting to include the concept of happiness in the debate. Thank you for your attention. Who wants to be the next one for the next meeting? Are there any candidates? Go ahead. I've sent pictures to friends about the bridge of Algiers. A message says that the bridge of Alexander III was given by the Tsar of Nicholas II.
Alors, donc,
Applications are open. And for this meeting to take place in another continent, in another country, in another bay, in another city, in another venue. And I believe that for us, success is to be able to continue this debate. I would like to thank you all very much. I don't know how to thank you, because it was unexpected to hold this event in Algiers with you all, people who came from around the world. We've shared everything on social networks, and everyone was able to follow it, and it was a technical challenge. I wanted to thank the technical team because they also disseminated it with the simultaneous translation in English on YouTube and Facebook, and also recorded it to be used afterwards. Thank you all. You also wanted to say something? I also wanted to say something about the history of the bridge. I've noted a few words that will explain to you how things occurred. An observation made by Nacym and Siham, an analysis of Algiers, an idea. They stayed up late. Proposals, presentations, debates, a competition, a lot of coffee, and finally, this plenary as a first outcome. Thank you. We're now going to move to the winners and the award that were decided by an international jury. In the meantime, there is a video that we're going to play in parallel. The video, Algiers 20XX, which was completed designed by Riyad Wad from Moderne, Akram Azizi, first prize. Jihad Muhammad Walid and Ben Amara Maryam. Shiko Wangambe, that's the second prize. She's from Kenya. We wanted her to be here, but it wasn't possible for us. And she's watching us live now. And Sylwia Markinskowska from Poland, who also left a video, and she's watching us live. So now we'll show you the video, and then we'll give you 2 minutes each to talk about the project.
Tu es le premier prix, donc.
First prize, so you get to speak first. Is it on? Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Baghli. I wanted to know that I am really moved and honored for being present this evening with you. And we are here living one of the most outstanding moments. Without further ado, I'll present the project, my project, which is called Smart Islands, Smart Algiers. It is very often informational and moving to go back to the origin of our cities, and in a city like Algiers, in the development, whose development is relevant and constant under our eyes, it is important to underline the links between the past and the present in order to show the grandeur of the facility that we're going to complete in the next future. The exact origin of the city of Algiers goes back, as per Stefan Xan in his book, Ancient History of North Africa, and in the era of Hercules, and who came to an archipelago to Aljazair, which is a series of islands. So this vision led to an idea to show the paradoxical fact of how to sail to the future, but being backed by the past. So this vision has allowed me to guide all the design process of this project. And as the digital has partitioned the universe, and the project of Algiers Smart City is trying to connect and make this city, the city of Algiers, a connected city. The stake was to make out of the Bridge of Algiers a project that is flexible in a process of sustainable development. That is, if we ask ourselves the question, the architecture that we are trying to establish today, will it be viewed and perceived in the same way in 50 years? So I wanted a project that would be part and parcel of the Algiers 2030 project, and in a near or far future context. The concept of bridge was interpreted in my project in a subtle way, not as a masterpiece, but an element articulated by the different stakeholders or parts of the city. After that, the vision of the project was a polygonal network and an algorithmic mathematical matrix made up of different entities which are floating dynamic islands, and those dynamic floating islands would move around the east and west motorway of Algiers, and those floating islands will be connected to different annexes that will allow them to be connected, and that will transport vehicles and people from the continent. Everything is governed the way the brain is trying to quantify and to connect the human body in the throughout the synapses and the neurons. So he was saying that the branches will be connected and turn around the floating islands and allow the development of maritime mobility. Now, as an architecture, the project is presented as an emerging body from water. So the formal concept of this shapes it will be based on a foundation, and the foundation will allow the connection with the different annexes, and that body will allow us to have a submarine marine and land view, which will allow activities like aquatic cinema, aquaculture, and also to develop the culture of this ancestral city by in the programmation. There will be the Mediterranean Museum, which will be in the body of this floating island. Everything will be governed mathematically in a smart way, and tourists, individuals, and inhabitants of the island will be able to move and to reconquer this bay, which was abandoned by the inhabitants of the city of Algiers. And during their movements or traveling, they will benefit from activities that would have been programmed in this artificial island, artistic and cultural activities. So in terms of reschedule of programmation, it will be the Museum of the Mediterranean. Akram, you'll have to be brief. So the island was designed so as to be autonomous and to take its energy from the hollow motor energy of waves in order to be able to move independently, and solar energy for lighting and heating the inner spaces of the city, thus developing the environment, culture of this ancestral city, whose history goes back to centuries and just needs to be retold. Thank you.
Alors, on passe à Jireb, Walid et...
Now we give the floor to Jirab and Mariam Ben Amara, winner of the third prize. Ladies and gentlemen, the member of jury, I am honored today to present a work that has been done by myself and my friends, two students from the School of Architecture. Before starting, I'd like to thank Nacym and Siham for the work on this initiative of the Jisr al-Jazair, the Bridge of Algiers, and the fact that they've shared this project with us, young architects. I'd like to thank the jury members and all the attendants here. When we talk about Algiers, we talk about a synthesis space. We speak about a fragile bay and sensitive bay on account of its architecture and its specificities. To intervene on this bay, so we have to identify objectives and initial parameters for the conception, for the design, before drawing up the project. The major challenge of this project is how to ensure this link that will cross the Algerian Gulf, and how to preserve the identity of the city while doing a crazy project of this kind, which will be an innovative project. So first of all, what we propose is to keep a bridge logic, a physical liaison or link that will link the two sides, and look for a transparency of the bridge by exploiting new technologies of the flow management to resolve all the problems related to the absorption of flows, especially in the region of Bab el-Oued. So the balance of the bridge, as you may see here, it's a form of dredge, which is launched to the quay. It's kind of a tour to, or a gate to the city, inspiring from the Museum of Maqam al-Shahid, or the Martyr Memorial. So please, because we're running out of time, we need to hand over your certificates to you. And so what I can promise is that your projects are going to be published on the internet, on Facebook, so that people could take stock of them. So I'll hand over we'll hand over the certificates and we move on to the snacks. So I invite Arabi Marhoum and Farid Taibi with the certificates of attendance for Akram Azizi.
نسيم بعد 24 سنة مهندس معماري دونك ارشيتكت وراني شارك في الكونكور الجي 2000XX.
Moi c'est Nacym, j'ai 28 ans, je suis designer. Je participe au concours Alger 20XX.
C'est un projet qui a commencé il y a 10 ans à peu près, qui concerne notre ville, Alger, et il s'agit de la repenser en collaboration avec toutes les personnes qui le souhaitent pour la préparer aux années futures.
Pour nous, c'est d'abord un projet de société. Avant que ce soit un projet urbain ou un projet architectural, c'est d'abord un projet de société que nous imaginons pour notre ville, mais bien au-delà.
Donc c'est les gens qui vivent la ville qui la font. Ce n'est pas les architectes, ce n'est pas les urbanistes, ce n'est pas les sociologues.
La finalité n'est pas Alger, mais Alger, ce serait vraiment le début de quelque chose de nouveau qui va s'inscrire dans le futur.
Quand quelque chose se passe à Alger, forcément ça devient contagieux.
Donc c'est un concours qu'on a lancé en juillet 2018 qui concerne les moins de 30 ans. C'est un espèce de brainstorming géant.
Donc j'ai entendu parler de ce projet sur les réseaux sociaux il y a quelques mois et ça m'a intrigué, ça m'a intéressé. Parce que Alger est ma ville, donc j'y suis né, j'y ai grandi.
Que Alger est arrivé à, on peut dire, saturation. Et on est en train d'essayer de réfléchir comment elle va supporter son développement, ne serait-ce que démographique, des prochaines années.
Essayer de comprendre les besoins des personnes, essayer de comprendre leur mode de vie, essayer de comprendre leurs perspectives, essayer de comprendre la diversité de ce qu'ils sont.
Et on voudrait, chacun dans son domaine, soit concerné et qui pourrait apporter aussi leur regard et leurs solutions.
J'aime à rêver que peut-être notre ville serait différente, que peut-être nos vies en tant qu'Algériens soient différentes. Je rêve qu'il y ait peut-être plus d'opportunités pour les gens, plus d'égalité, plus de respect les uns pour les autres.
C'est un défi de bien vivre dans une ville, surtout le mode de vie. Et peut-être mettre l'accent sur le vivre ensemble. Peut-être aussi ça, on en parle beaucoup, mais c'est vraiment important de le souligner.
C'est une ville qui m'a longtemps inspiré durant mes études d'architecture et après. Il y a de nombreux rêves à concrétiser. Et on n'en a pas spécialement beaucoup l'occasion. Le concours est un prétexte, ça aurait pu être autre chose, pour être honnête.
Il y a plein de pôles sur lesquels on peut agir, qui font partie du projet Jisr el-Jazair. Chaque pôle a son importance et son impact. On a choisi d'intervenir sur le pôle de la Casbah.
Parce que c'est un réceptacle تاع ناس تاع عباد تاع des vies تاع حياة اللي لازم نفهموه.
Alger, pour moi, je ne vais pas parler en tant qu'architecte, mais Alger, en tant que personne, c'est la promesse.
Nous ambitionnons de réunir tout le monde, et les membres du jury, et les lauréats, et les représentants de la ville d'Alger, de la société civile, des universités, des écoles, et surtout bien sûr la jeunesse.
Donc il y a des grands noms dans le domaine de l'architecture, dans le domaine de l'histoire de l'architecture, dans le domaine de l'urbain, dans le domaine de la sociologie, dans le domaine de l'économie, dans le domaine du cinéma.
Et tout cela va se conclure avec une rencontre qui est importante que nous prévoyons pour la fin janvier 2019.
Je ne suis pas spécialement adepte des initiatives top-down. Les جيت تحط حاجة هكايا في la ville, tu la mets en valeur. L'avantage d'un concours d'idées comme ça, c'est que on peut envisager la ville de demain par la perspective de خالتي يمين اللي طيب الكسرة, de عمي بوعلام le plombier. Le Hamé, ça pourrait tout aussi bien être le hub high-tech de la ville d'Alger. Et de là, c'est un marché. De là, le Wetkni, c'est un marché. Znert el-Araïs, c'est un endroit où on le valorise de la même manière. On respecte la volonté des gens d'en faire Znert el-Araïs.
Il y a beaucoup d'initiatives, de personnes qui essayent de faire des choses dans divers domaines, mais on peut dire à leur échelle, et peut-être qu'ils ne sont pas, comment dire, mis en valeur, mais ils le font.
Et l'idée d'une ville d'Alger dans le futur, c'est justement une ville qui célèbre ses différences, qui les soutient, qui les oriente dans leurs existences individuelles et qui crée des liens concrets, qui soient matériels à travers un pont géant qui traverse la baie, ou là autre, technologique, social, émotionnel.
Nous avons donc eu 400 à peu près inscrits et 55 nationalités. Donc franchement, on a touché un petit peu tout le monde. Et ça, c'était une belle surprise.
Donc le jury final est là pour prendre 3 lauréats avec cette mention spéciale.
For people who participate to the contest from all the countries, even if you don't come from the city, it is a city where interacted people from different cultures throughout history.
I want to tell to the other people that are going to participate to the contest that they need to put their heart and soul in to be no limit, because it's the only way to innovate, and we need a lot of innovation in this contest.
لازم تشوفوا الجزائر العاصمة كيما راهي. If I can say it in English, so it is a crossroads of civilizations that you need to encapsulate in a piece of paper.
J'aime toutes les villes un peu plus Paris, لكن ماشي comme l'Algérie, comme elle est belle ونحبها في الهبال, فاين نكون ما ننساها, ألجي شحال نحبها. كي بعيد نتفكرك ولا بلونشور, قلبي plein de tristesse, ما ينساكش en revanche. Où est-tu place du gouvernement, معمرة بحبابي, لو نكون غريب plein de tourments, غير نتفكرها je souris.
S'il vous plaît, n'oubliez pas de remettre les casques de traduction. Merci.